Welcome to Behind the Mask in Conversation with. Behind the Mask is a neurodivergent focused podcast that aims to offer support, knowledge, understanding, and most importantly, exposure to the neurodivergent community. If you are here, firstly, I hope you enjoy the episode. And lastly, if you are enjoying it, please like, follow, share, and subscribe because your support with this podcast can really help us push the message out. Keep being amazing all, and thank you.
Let's.
Okay, so this is episode 8 of series 1 of Behind the Mask. So Behind the Mask is a podcast made by neurodivergents for neurodivergents. And during the podcast, we look to explore knowledge, understanding, experience of different individuals in the bid to create a more connected, a more supported, and a less alone community of people. This episode is slightly different. So we're ending series 1 with a flip the script episode. So the past 7 episodes, I've been talking to individuals who have been sharing their knowledge and experiences, and in a lot of cases being really raw, open and honest with the intention of supporting other people. The flip the script episode is I've either going to live to regret or love it, but Mr. ADHgreg, the man himself, is our host for the evening. So Greg is flipping the script on me and taking me behind the mask. So welcome.
Yeah. Welcome to you too. Strap in.
Yeah, no, thanks for doing that. We chatted about this earlier on, like early on when this podcast was forming. I was like, I feel like there needs to be something where I put myself in the position. And then I didn't talk about it for a while. And then I had a gap in episodes come up and I was like, yeah, Greg, let's do this. And you were like, absolutely, let's roll.
That's the thing. You don't often see the hosts sort of unburden themselves. They tend to be the person doing all the questioning. And it's like, yeah, but people should get to know you too.
Yeah. And it's one of those, like I do share a lot via TikTok and whatnot. I'm quite an open book. But not everybody catches everything. There might be some people towards the end when we open up the questions that might want to ask something. And yeah, I'm open. So wherever you want to take it. And if there's anything I'm not comfortable with, I'll just go, no, thank you.
Exactly. So yeah, all right. Well, we'll crack on then. I've got some questions that I've written down, some that you've seen. And then there's just a few that sort of rattle around in my head. So we'll see where we end up. But let's start with very simple. Who is Paul and what drove you or encouraged you to start being present on TikTok?
So who am I? I think in a bigger picture, I'm somebody that has for years struggled with mental health, not understanding what it was, somebody that has kind of walked the same path as many people that I've connected with in this community, someone that struggled to understand who I was, why I was the way I was. There's a lot of whys there. But strip that back, I'm somebody that genuinely likes connection. As much as I enjoy time on my own, I am best when I'm connecting with other people and building relationships and stuff like that. As to why I started TikTok, so yeah, from mid to late teens, very severe mental health for me, and it's a level of mental health that the doctors just fed into, in my opinion. I've said before, and I'd never dig down at GPs, but knowing what I know now, I was almost just told you've got X, Y, you've got depression, you've got high function anxiety, you've got OCD, you've got all of these things. Given medication, that didn't work for me. I was on mental health SSRI medications for 7 years, which did a lot of damage to me personally. I came out of a relationship and I just had a breakdown. So after 9 years in a relationship, that ended overnight, and I just had a breakdown basically. And that, in a weird way, was when my new life started in more than one way. The breakup led to me randomly stumbling across a diagnosis assessment pre-screen for ADHD. At the time, it was when I was told I had OCD, so I was looking more into OCD, and OCD led me to the assessment. And it was the biggest aha moment I've ever had in my life. It was, I'm somebody that for years has been learning about psychology. I've listened to countless books. I've done TED Talks, all in a bid for years to try and find the one that I resonated with. And I went, that's me. And it never sat in any of them places. It literally sat in an online assessment on Clinical Partners. And yeah, when I found that out, I knew I needed to know more, but I wasn't comfortable in talking to friends, family, and people around me. I was quite isolated at the time through my own choice. I just retracted from everybody because I didn't want them to see that version of me. And I found TikTok. Stumbled across 3 creators, Jill, Ben, and Frenchie, and they were the first 3 people that I saw, and they were sharing their experiences, and I think they were probably a few months ahead of me. And I felt like I'd found my people, and things had started to make sense for me. So that's what led me to TikTok. As to the why I do what I do now is because I know the impact transparency and honesty can have on an individual who's trying to seek some kind of understanding of themselves. And I feel like it's important to carry the baton, I suppose. I think that's my why when it comes to TikTok.
Yeah. Yeah. Things you're talking about doctors and stuff, and it just feels like they have this tick sheet and there's no ADHD or autism on it. It's just everything else. They just like, yeah, let's just check for all of these. Like, no, what about the other stuff? No, we don't need to worry about that.
And it's bizarre because when we look at the reasons why doctors can't diagnose, and I understand the diagnosis, but doctors aren't trained in clinical depression. They aren't trained in diagnosed high function anxiety, but they're very quick to give you those titles and labels. They're very quick to push forward medication, which is mind altering, to treat something that they are not trained in. So I really struggle with, I don't think doctors should be diagnosing ADHD because they're not the professionals, but don't tell us you can't for that reason when you've spent years telling so many people they're diagnosed with things that you are also not trained to. I've got a real sticky point with that.
Yeah. And I think it's sort of interesting you talk about this unburdened honesty and openness with TikTok. I think, at least from what I've seen and from our interactions early on until now, I think the age of fakery might be over. I think at least in our space, openness seems to be the thing that is helping people the most. Shielding, like hiding behind scripting and shielding, it doesn't seem to be a thing anymore for the areas we like to live in.
Yeah, and I think what's important is it's not your responsibility. It's not a responsibility, and that's not the right word. But I firmly believe, like, the end didn't start when I found my answer. That's when things started for me. That's when my life properly started. I've done things, I've had loads of fantastic experience, and I've lived a life, but I've lived a life with a curse over me. I've shared before. So my family has a history of addiction. There's a history of people deciding that they no longer want to be here, and that's been their choice. And there's been a history of people doing time in Her Majesty's pleasure. like, and that's not all my family, but I've got quite a big family. That my dad's one of 13, my mom's one of 6, so there's a lot of us. And there was always this curse over the name, the family name, both externally when it comes to the Nightingales and some things that went on with my cousins and whatnot, and then the mental health side of things. And I think I'd grow up genuinely believing I was cursed. And then when I got older and went into a cycle of poor mental health myself and not understanding it, not getting support, not getting context, I just thought I had the gene and I was destined to end up in the same place. And I carried that from the age of 21, which was the first time I made moves against my own.
Yep.
I was in a real bad place, and thankfully a friend stopped that happening. But at the age of 21, things started to really go down for me. And I think it was when life stabilizers moved and I had to start navigating my own life, things just started to gradually fall apart for me, because it was too much. And all of those things at the time made me feel shit, useless, like I had nothing to offer, like I was terrible at doing life. But I now know the reasons to that, and I think that's changed a lot in the last. Me sitting here now is significantly different to 2 years ago, let alone 15 years ago.
Yeah. And that brings up sort of the next question I had, which was like early childhood, not the 20s where we all start, sliding downhill with no stabilizers and not really knowing where we're going. But like your early years growing up, was there a sense of otherness? Did you feel like you didn't fit in with kids your age, or did it start sometimes insidiously as a really good time that then sort of disappeared?
I think it varied. I think I was never a loner as a child. I was really good at creating a pack around me. I was really good at aligning myself with multiple groups of people. All that added different values to my life, even from a young age. I had different clusters of friends. Early childhood, up until I was in year 4 of primary, I was badly bullied. Like I never really found my lane. I was extremely bullied. I kept trying to be popular, and the only place that got me was people like I was beat up a lot as a kid. There was people who would beeline for me. I think there was a lot to do with the family name, if I'm honest, because some of my elders was known as the cock of the estate and the hard knocks, and it was a family thing. There was a real curse, and I think my brother dodged it slightly with his year group, but with my year group, there were so many people from opposing families on the estate, and it wasn't a pleasant time. My mum then moved me schools. Thankfully, she knew one of the people at another school locally and managed to get me through the back door, so to speak, because I shouldn't have been able to go there. But what was weird for me is I went from being bullied to initially being the bully. I moved. I moved primary schools, and I'd say for 6 months I was a bully. And it wasn't because I thought it was the right way to be. It was because I thought I needed to put forward that version of me to stop the same thing happening again. And yeah, that was shit looking back. And like me becoming that person isn't fundamentally who I was. It was who I thought I had to be.
Yeah.
But again, that move was a change for me. The last couple of years in school, once I'd got past this stage, in primary school, I'd started to be myself. I'd found a lane. I was a bit geeky. I was a bit silly, a bit daft, but people enriched that rather than shooting it down. But then I went back to high school and I was faced with every person that was there. And it did change. I wouldn't say in high school I was bullied, because I went And I was a big lad. I mean, I'm a big lad now. I'm 6'3", and I've got some size to me. But going into year 7, I was a lot stronger and a lot more less prepared to take shit than I did when I was younger.
Yeah, it makes sense. Yeah, you sort of you went through such hardship as a youngster that you started mimicking those people in new situations because nobody hurt them. So
Yeah,
if you mirror them,
and it's not that it was all terrible. There were good times. There were nice moments. There were some great teachers along the way, but I was always the one that was in trouble because I took it too far. If
yeah,
I got a laugh out of a class, to me, that was me thinking, and I'm still like that now, and that's something I carry with me. If I bring laughter to a group, I don't know when to stop. I keep pushing and pushing and pushing
yeah,
because there's something inside me that gets the feel good factor from bringing humor, and that a lot of the time was where I got in trouble. Not listening, not focusing, prattling around. It was low level disruption, but all the bloody time.
yeah, yeah, yeah. So we've got sort of this pre-diagnosis picture of you of like you're guilty by association because of your name. You're we will discover that you were born neurodivergent, so you've already got that back foot. You've got all this extra stuff put on top of you, and trying to find your way in the world. But by your own admission, you sort of try to do a lot of that alone because a
Yeah.
lot of us do that. We pull back. I can do this because I think, especially as young men back then, you're expected to just figure it out. You don't need help. You're a boy, go figure it out. So then my curiosity then is your whole world sort of gets redefined by a diagnosis you weren't actually looking for. You were looking for something else. You found the ADHD diagnosis along the way. What does that do immediately, but also how does that affect not only your personal life, but your professional life and your social life, immediately after that moment?
I think for me, I've had to go through a significant kind of strip back and change. Um, I'd I'd say the first 8 months after getting diagnosed, the first 2 months I put forward the genuine me, and there wasn't a fakery, but I think because I was getting a positive response from people on TikTok, I kept the trajectory and the message and the content in that direction. But for me, it wasn't all roses. Like, I really crashed last year. And it's weird talking to a few other people, some people that they went through a similar cycle, but others were open about it, whereas I think I wasn't honest with myself. I think when you get diagnosed, there's an elation, there's a validation that sits with it. But very quickly, what happened for me was I I found myself in a real pit of sadness, borderline depression. I'd say, looking back at it now, and it was a grief and a sadness that I couldn't shake towards the younger me, the one that I wasn't able to articulate effectively. I was finding all these words that for years I couldn't find, and I almost felt bad on it. Um, and I've said to you, last year I was drinking significantly, and I think that was a real pinch point for me. I was drinking to not feel how I felt, which has always been a way in which I've handled things. If I had a happy moment, I'd celebrate with a drink. If I was feeling shit or I had no dopamine, I'd have a drink to pick it up. I'd created a lot of false walls around myself just to allow me to be the masked version. So it's only really been, I'd say, since December that things have changed positively. But there's been a lot of positive things in the background, but me personally, I've started to really take stock of myself. I've changed my lifestyle completely. And I've given myself a chance at getting to know myself, because before I wasn't.
Yeah, so you sort of, it, as they call it, the glow up. You sort of one day you just, you
Yeah.
know what, this isn't working for me, so let me try a whole bunch of other stuff that's different. And the benefit of having ADHD
Well,
is that you try it all.
I'd be on lives with you lot, and I'd say, and it wasn't all the time, but I'd say I'm going to get petrol, and it was petrol, but that petrol was my petrol, and it was vodka and not petroleum.
Ah,
But that was common. Like but what I realised was TikTok last year became a platform. It became a social platform. And what do I do when I'm in social situations? I give myself a false wall. I put forward the version of me. And I think there was a few of you that knew the other side of me, because we spoke off app and we had conversations outside. But it's even now, like Jen, who I'm close with, she'll go, I could see you become the performer, man. You become the entertainer rather than yourself. And it's weird that this app became the stage, what I'd normally have in my other jobs as well.
but I think there's also that natural progression for a lot of us where the first couple times you go live, that's heavily masked. But as you're accepted by a community, and as you start to see people speak the way you speak and think the way you think, at least in a generalized degree, you start to unburden yourself more and more, to the point where I find I don't mask all that heavily anymore, even on here, because I think there's enough people that go, yeah, no, that's Greg. That's how Greg is. And I think the same thing has happened with you. When we first met, you could see this sort of crack between mask and person. And we were lucky enough to see what that person looks like without the mask. So then when you come back on the app and you're like, that's not entirely how you act. Watching you unmask more and more, become more and more comfortable, has been a real joy to see, because it also allows you to help far more honestly.
And I think where that's changed for me is I don't want anyone to dislike me, because to dislike me would mean potentially I'm doing something wrong to that person. But I no longer give a shit whether or not I'm everybody's person. And I used to change the version of me to bring in and accommodate everyone else. I think the biggest flip in me, firstly, I'm sober. I haven't drank in 5.5 months, maybe 5 months.
Nice.
And that in itself presents you with a situation where you've got to sit with yourself. And even if people, like for me, I wouldn't say I was an alcoholic. I just had a real piss poor relationship with alcohol. Alcohol was my mask to enable the mask. And all that does is just creates a false wall. And if there's anybody who does that, or other things that they have to enable them to be a certain way, just try removing it just for a bit and see how you feel. It's not always easy. It's not been that easy. I've only just started socializing again now. But the reward is there. I've learned more about myself in the last 5 months as I have in the last 20 years of trying to.
Yeah, because I think you start to really pay attention, as opposed to drifting through life trying to pay attention. You get to a point where you're like, oh, I really do need to focus on who I am as a human being. And because of our ability to be so intense, we get a lot done very quickly. But it was sort of the perfect time for a question of, where was it? What is something you would like everybody, not just neurodivergents, to know about neurodivergence, be it good or bad? And would it be the looking deeper into your own life, paying more attention to your own health, or is it something else that you think is integral to know, either as a neurodivergent or dealing with neurodivergence?
For me, for anyone who is neurodivergent trying to figure things out, the end goal isn't having a quiet brain. The end goal is allowing yourself the space to listen to your own brain. And actually, it doesn't, I wouldn't say it makes it quieter, but allowing yourself time to kind of listen to what your body's telling you. And it all sounds boho and bullshit, but I don't get emotions. I don't read emotions. I just feel something and it has an impact. But what I've been able to do, and I started doing it last year. I used to record down. If I had an experience, I'd write down what it was and how it made me felt, because I needed a reference point, and I still do that now. But don't fight to shut the voice up in your head. Give yourself the space to listen to it, because quite often the voice in your head or the reaction in your body is it's trying to give you an indicator that either you feel uncomfortable or you're experiencing something. And if you just brush over it, all you do is just compress that inside. You compress, and there's only so much of that you can do. Yeah, so it is. I think so many people say, I just want the voices to stop. I want the narrative to stop in my head. I don't want it to stop. I've just had to really work at making it make sense.
So that actually brings up another thought in my head, because what we are can't be cured.
Mm.
But if it could be, would we even want it?
I don't think I would. I'm not medicated at the minute, and I think going back to the voices in your head, I did a video the other day, and like I'd gone from having some real positive time and feeling good, and I hit, I'd say, about a 2.5 week semi burnout, if you wish. I weren't fully burnt out, but it was teetering on the edge. And during that time, I had multiple voices in my head. One was my own best friend, and that my own best friend hadn't always been there. And I think I've created that version of myself through being more empathetic to myself. So what I like now is, in my narrative, there's somebody that's got my own back, whereas before I was very much against myself. And I've had to build that person and create them. But then you've got the psychologist, psychiatrist, and that medical version. But then you've got bullies, and you've got the biggest pessimist going whatever, and it's a battle. It's a battle for the loudest voice. But actually, when they're all battling, it just becomes noise. And it's almost like what I spent, and I was quieter on the app. I dropped an episode of this because I wanted to spend time away. And it's just going, what are you trying to say? Why are you saying? What are you trying to say? Why are you saying it? But I think if I got rid of that voice, I'd struggle to understand myself, because I'd have no cues. I'd have no directive that things were going right or wrong, because I now can work that out from my noggin.
Yeah, I think I'd really struggle if it was silent. I mean, yeah, there are elements of this that are a chore. And like you say, we can get the burnouts and the deep feelings of darkness, but it's not like I'm sick. This is who I am, right? So having that ability stay in your head the whole time, like, yeah, it can be a struggle, but it's my struggle. It's my thing to carry around, you know?
And I think, skipping back to, I know you said one thing that I'd say, and I was on about, like, don't try and shut it up, just learn to listen to it. I think another thing that I've found really important is finding the appropriate words that sit within a feeling. As I said, I spent years being told I was prone to depression, and every time I had a burnout, what I now know to be a burnout, I was depressed. So I had this narrative all the time. When I was exhausted, depression. When I was feeling burnt out, I was depressed. When I actually had depression, it was next level depression. So the narrative I continually used to describe how I was, because that's what I was being told by the doctors, was depressed, 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 depressed. I now know that I probably had severe depression 3 times instead of 303 times.
Yeah.
And it's amazing what changing the word you attribute to a feeling can do to your mindset. Like, I'm burnt out. It's not depression. I'm just sitting at a solid -10.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm struggling to get it to a -5 or even a neutral.
Yeah.
What can I do? What can I get to a 9, 8, 7, 6? And it gives you the ability to strategize. Whereas when you're just depressed, it's like, there's your label. ADHD is not that. Depressed and depression's the label, and that sticks heavier than anything.
Yeah, and I think that that sort of ideology misses the nuance, because I think a lot of our experiences with treatment have been a binary. You either are depressed or you aren't. You either are anxious or you aren't. So everything must be either depression or anxiety. But as you've said, there's a nuance to it where you're like, no, this isn't depression. This is burnout. Depression is a completely different sensation. And once you can learn to differentiate them, you can almost feel them in your head. You can almost say, this is a burnout, or I'm heading towards a burnout.
Yeah.
And this is definitely depression, and I need to ask for help. And knowing that nuance is super important, I think, to a lot of us, because you go, no, I'm not anxious. I'm on edge and excited. I think it's an anxiety because I was taught that this is what anxiety feels like. But in fact, anxiety feels like this. Similar, not the same.
And it's like the word overwhelm, I think it gets mocked a lot. And like I've seen people who are mocking, going, millennials, oh, everyone's overwhelmed. It's overwhelmed all the time. But it's a bit like I can't think of a better word than moist to describe the bottom of a soggy cake. In the same respect, I can't think of a better word than overwhelm to now describe that feeling of unsettled, anxiety, overwhelmed by something. And if somebody's saying they're overwhelmed, I guarantee that they're probably feeling shit about admitting it as well, because it feels childish, it feels passive, it feels an excuse. Oh, I'm overwhelmed. But that's a narrative we've been taught. But when you actually step back and go, okay, if I wasn't calling this overwhelm, what would I call it? I can't find a better word.
But that's the thing. It's like we shame struggle, we shame pain, but these are universal experiences. I never quite understood why we kept shaming them. This is what all human beings go through. We don't yell at babies when they start crying because they're struggling, but we yell at grown-ups. Why is that? Can we not still struggle?
And there's a lot of words within it, like, and that is a space that I struggled with the language, because I think, because these are conditions that were attributed to children, the language used is very child friendly. When we now know that you don't grow out of this shit, you almost grow into it.
Yeah.
You don't grow out of it, you go into it, and you either get a grip of it or it takes a grip of you. There's no other option. But like meltdown to me is that kid having a paddy. It's me having a paddy. Like when I was a kid, there was a running joke in our family. We'd go, oh, he's having a Benny. And a Benny was when I'd kick off or I'd have a tantrum or I'd go mad. It was, oh, he's just having a Benny. And so sometimes I was just being a little brat. But other times when I look back now, I was just not in control of how I felt. I didn't understand how I felt. And the only way I knew how to deal with it was either to go in my room quietly and cry or to make a scene. Yeah. It was one or the other. There was no middle ground.
And who was supposed to teach you that? That's the other thing. It's like we talk about kids that tantrum a lot, or kids that, have real anger control issues, and you're like, yeah, but they're a kid, they don't know how to control it. You're supposed to teach them. I think we forget that children are mostly blank slates. If the parents don't teach them how to manage those emotions, how are they going to learn that?
And I also think with that as well, like going back to when I first got diagnosed, I had a real anger towards my parents. I had a real anger towards teachers, and it was a bitterness. I felt a grief towards the younger version of me that I couldn't help, but then I also felt like the people around me didn't help, and it really fueled a bitterness inside me. And the only way I let go of that was by reframing, rationalizing, and giving them grace as well. Like, reality is either one or both of my parents are neurodivergent. My brother, who had never explored it before, after I started, he looked at it, and I remember he initially didn't explore it much at all. He just kind of thought it was my thing. And then he randomly just sent me screenshots of these pre-screens he did, and he was like, yeah, I'm fucked and all. And that was my brother's way of saying to me, I think you're onto something here. And like he'll say, like he doesn't feel the need to get diagnosed at the moment. Knowledge to him is the power he needs. He's got a supportive family. He's married. He's got his children, and he's got the way in which his network setup works for him. And I think if he needed to, he'd go for it. But right now, he doesn't need to. He's kind of comforted in the knowledge that he now gets why he feels certain ways.
Yeah.
But I think, like when I go back to my parents, like it's so apparent. It is so apparent. And the more and more like that I talk to my dad about it, he'll say stuff, and my dad started going, have I got it as well? I have AI, I have R. And I'm just like, possibly. But yeah, I think we're double kissed from both mom and dad in our family.
Well, I learned when I was on my journey, like as we were learning, as we together were discovering new things, every time I spoke to my mother, I was like riddled with ADHD. She got the lowest score on an autism test I've ever seen, but ADHD coming out of her ears.
Yeah.
But then I find out my dad's bipolar. Like, this was kind of inevitable. And now I'm seeing it in my brothers, and they're starting to go through that journey with the same denial we struggled with. And it sort of becomes very apparent that we're now looking even further back and like, could my grandmother have been? Yes. Could her mother? Yes. And it just, oh, there we go. There's the through line.
Well, I see it like me and my brother had this conversation the other day, and I had the conversation with my mum, in fact, about my uncle that sadly is no longer with us. Both me and my brother looked and we just went, Uncle John was textbook. He was textbook. And in a lot of ways, my brother's got some similarities with Uncle John. But then when I look at the social side of Uncle John, I'm a lot like him. Always the one to kickstart the party. Always the one to bring the fun, show off, like that side of it. And you look and you just go. And I think the sad reality is there's a high likelihood that he may still be with us if where we are as a family with knowledge now, we were 20 years ago or 10, 15 years ago. Because the treatments they received for these conditions was electric treatment on the brain, like to levels of being locked up, electrolysis on the brain. Yeah, some of the stuff I know that my elders in my family have been through because of mental health just makes me shudder. And I think you kind of have to forgive a lot of situations and just go, do you know what, we can only move it forward. It's sad, and it could send you soft if you think about it too much, but now it's almost like a clean slate wiped, and there's so many people in my family now whose children are getting diagnosed, younger cousins who have been in the mirror imaged me on medication. At school, when I went to school, they was told, you're just like your cousin. When one of my younger second cousins went, he was told, you're just like Paul. And there's this common theme. And he's like, I always knew I was like you, but now I know why they say I was like you.
Yeah. That's the thing. It's that thing of recognizing the sins of the past and knowing that how we used to treat neurodivergence was barbaric. But it's also saying, yes, we recognize that, and there is no excuse. So now we have to move forward in a cleaner, more empathetic way.
But no, feeling like you can is probably the biggest relief I've ever had. Yeah. I'm no longer waiting for the time when it all gets too much. Yeah. Like I know, and this sounds a bit sad and a bit soppy, but unless something drastic happens, I'm going to die of old age.
Yeah.
And I never saw that age before. I never saw myself getting there. And when I was younger, it was weird. I used to tell everyone that I wasn't going to be here after my 30th. And everyone used to tell me, you're a nut job. And I used to consistently dream when I was younger. It's quite funny. It was the 27 Club. And like in my head, I was convinced that I was never going to make it past then. and I had another breakdown just before my 30th, and then I
Right.
woke up on my 30th. I was like, I'm still here. But yeah,
I think as we go through these journeys, these mental health journeys, and we start to really take stock of what we're aiming for, I think the simplest goal should be to make the distance between now and self-conclusion as far as possible, because there's nothing inherently shameful about being in a situation where you think that's an option. That's not a failing of you, that's a failing of others. But if we can bridge the gap further and further away, like you say, now you're going, well, now I'm going to die of old age. Well, that means that you've taken that sensation and moved it as far away as possible.
The biggest weight off my shoulder is that I am genetically and inherently cursed with being a product of my family line, because that sat with me for years.
Well, it's the phrase, that your pain is not your fault, but your healing is your responsibility.
Yeah, absolutely.
Someone did this to you, but you need to now undo it. But now that sort of brings me naturally to my next question, but I do need to sidestep ever so slightly.
Go for it.
I was just thinking while we were talking about it, I think we need to come up with a new word to replace meltdown. Because the term meltdown is used exclusively, as it should be, for when power plants of a certain type stop working. Do we really want to be telling kids that that's what their behavior reminds us of? That word may need to go back to its original usage and not apply to people's mental health.
Effectively, it's just an overload, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's you are experiencing an overload of something, and it is causing you to either retract or act out because you can't get a handle of what's going on.
Yeah. So my question was sort of, because you let me run riot with these questions, so I decided
go for it.
A little nerdy here. If you were to wake up tomorrow and the entire world has accepted neurodivergence and mental health completely and has begun striving towards fixing those or helping people manage those, what do you think that would look like?
I think the two words that come to mind is acknowledgement and acceptance. I've got a video that I haven't put out yet, and I've procrastinated, and I will. And how I feel at the moment, if I'm honest, is I understand neurodivergent and neurotypical, and I understand the importance of it for context. But I also hold a lot of concern that by creating camps, what we do is actually drive a divide further, when actually what we need to do collectively is come together and create a little sexy cocktail of typical and divergent, and that is what you move forward, because you can't create a world moving forward made for neurodivergent people, because you would then flip the switch and isolate down the line neurotypicals. It's a world that is open, that accepts and acknowledges everything in it. And I think that concept crosses over to gender, sexuality, all that. What fundamentally sits at the bottom of it is people not feeling like their nose has been put out because other people exist.
Yeah. The point is not to be neurodivergent or neurotypical. The point is to be human.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then we get to my favorite question. So you have gone back in time and you are standing face to face with you much, much younger. And you can give you some advice. Before all of this other stuff we've talked about, at a young age, what would you say?
I think I just let myself know that you'll figure this out. And that's one thing I'm massively proud of. Like, I don't easily accept and feel pride. It's one thing I struggle to. But the one thing I'm comfortable in saying I'm proud of is that I never gave up on myself. And I think if I could go back to that younger kid who who at certain points in his life genuinely just felt like he wasn't going to be here, I'd just say the answer's in you and you will find it. Just keep trying. Like, it's going to be hard, it's going to test you, it's going to push you, you're going to feel alone a lot of the time, but the answer's in you, and at some point you will find a place where you no longer feel alone. And it's weird because my whole life's been surrounded by people, and there's a difference between being amongst people, and I've been blessed with a lot of friends, like I've been blessed, but there's a difference between being in the company and presence of people and people seeing you. There's a huge difference, and I think now I feel seen and now I feel understood.
Yeah.
So yeah, if I'd go back and just go, the answer sits with you, not other people.
Yeah. I like that. That's very good. It's almost like what you're doing is just encouraging and reinforcing a sensation you already have seen in yourself now. So you're saying, well, I'll just get ahead of it and make it a little bit stronger, but I won't change anything. And I like that, because I think a lot of us want to say, we want to prep that younger self for something horrific, whereas you're just saying, no, you're going to figure it out, but I'm here to let you know, to remember that you're going to figure it out.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I like that very much. Well, that's all I have for prepared remarks. We can go from there. But I did have one question, I think slightly more detailed than one of my earlier questions. What made you want to do the, first of all, a podcast, and second of all, on here? Like, what was the choice for this logistic?
I think I always had, since the point I got diagnosed, I always had a drive to make people feel seen and give people the opportunity to feel part of something, because that's been one of the biggest things I've said before on other podcasts and on videos. I think the beauty about the neurodivergent community is they walk next to you and with you. They don't try and get in front, they don't try and trip you up, they're willing to walk with you. And I think this platform has done that for so many people. It's connected, but I also think there's a huge importance in allowing people to connect, and that, like, through this podcast, I wanted, my aim is to meet with as many different people as possible from different backgrounds. Just because I don't connect with the person that I'm talking to, somebody else may, and that's my why. And that the start of it was the first guest, David. I saw his videos and he reminded me of my dad. And his videos really struck deep and they had an impact. And at the time, David had very few followers. He was really trying to connect and people were gradually coming in. And then he dropped a video and it blew up, and it absolutely should have done. It was his day one of taking medication. And that video had an impact on me that probably hasn't happened to that level. Strangely, it's up there with one of the most moving things I've seen. And he said to me, I just want to let people know my experience. And it started with me going, I'll do that with you. Let's do that together.
Yeah.
And then bit by bit, other people said it. And I just kind of put that together with, thank you very much. I put that together with the idea last year. It started off as Through the Years, if you remember. My original podcast idea was Through the Years, and it was going to take people through the years and their experiences. And this is what it's become.
Yeah.
And on here, because this is the place where I feel at home and amongst my people. So that's where I wanted it to be here.
Yeah, I like it. I thought there was something to be said about, like, not only are you recording a podcast, but there's kind of a live audience at the same time. I think there was that element of, like, being able to interact in that moment and then show the recording.
I think having immediate response and having the opportunity to see a response, it's like I'm looking and there's 30 odd people in, and I'm going, 30 odd people have seen it. So for me, that 30 people's done. Put it on the podcastings, and whoever watches it. But then on here, people can ask questions if they wanted to as well. We've all listened to a podcast and thought, I wish I could ask them about that.
Yeah. So I do have one more. It's not really a question. It's a quick fire round.
Okay.
But I've been saving it. I actually meant to do it on a live with you ages ago. And I'll give you some context, but it's not mine. It's an old questionnaire that a guy used there was an old TV show called Inside the Actors Studio. You ever heard of that?
No.
Okay, so the dean of a university, an actors university, used to interview famous people, people we would want to watch. It was some of the best interviews I've ever seen, but he always ended it with a questionnaire from an old French, I think it was a French philosopher. It's called the Bernard Pivot questionnaire.
Okay.
It's I think 10 questions, and it's quick fire, right? You don't have to answer immediately. You can think about it, but they're not in-depth questions. So, you ready?
Let's go.
What is your favorite word?
I love cappuccino. I think it perfectly describes a person and an action all in one.
Okay.
Riddled, I liked as well. I do like riddled.
What is your least favorite word?
Lettuce makes me feel a bit funny.
Okay. Okay. What turns you on creatively, spiritually, or emotionally?
Impact and connection.
What turns you off?
Arrogance and falsity.
What is your favorite curse word?
Prick. Because people don't know what to do. You call someone a prick, they're like, how do I respond? Is that really bad, or is that tame, or what? It's like, you prick. Like, I love it.
Yeah, sits on that line. You're like, I don't know. Yeah. What sound or noise do you love?
I love the sound of, do you know the old cassette sound that when the tape used to go on and go, I don't know what it is about that noise. I quite like that noise.
Okay, and what sound or noise do you hate?
I don't even know if it makes a sound, but when people touch or rub Velcro, not Velcro, velvet or suede, there might not be a sound that people hear, but I tell you now, I hear, and I
like a unconscious register. Okay.
Oh, horrible.
What profession other than your own would you like to attempt?
I would love to do some rehabilitation programs in prisons.
And what profession other than your own would you not like to attempt?
A diver.
I understand completely. There's so many things wrong with that. And then the final question. If heaven exists, what would you like to hear God say to you when you arrive at the pearly gates?
I love.
That's fantastic. I
love. All right, cock.
So you want God to be from the Black Country?
Yeah, it's got to be. Like, here's my theory on the heaven situation, and this is just my logical brain that has to go there. So I've never met anybody that has had a near but death experience, said they've seen the pearly gates, come back and went, I tell you what, it was fucking crowded up there. Nobody said it. Nobody's gone. I couldn't find nobody because there was thousands of people. I couldn't get through them. Everybody always says they see the people that they loved. Yeah. And that is why I firmly believe that there is somewhere that we go, but that place sits within us and our life experience, as opposed to we all turn up to the same gate and they go, oh, what room are you waiting in for? Like, I think heaven is a state of mind and a state of peace that we will all experience. But it's
your late family waiting for you, going, he said he'd be here 5 minutes.
It would be, wouldn't it? Like, it's hard to find a friend in a football stadium.
Right?
We've been around for years as mankind and humans, and religion and heaven has been around for a long time. That's going to be crowded.
Like, sorry, we're not waiting for you. We're waiting for a different Paul. Like, then why are you
Yeah.
standing here? Yeah, I like that. I like that
Or,
very much.
or you say you're not getting any ID, you're not coming in.
Yeah, no, I like the sort of diplomacy of heaven is a internal personal state of mind. I like that concept as opposed to it's up there somewhere.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, cool. Well, I enjoyed that very much.
Nice. Thank you very much. I appreciate you.
Yeah, I'm all out of questions. I can't think of any more.
Yeah, shall we throw it out, see if there are any questions? If you want to see if anyone's got anything they want to ask.
Sure, yeah.
I've just seen Alice, question mark, question mark, question mark, question mark.
One at a time, Alice. I need to read them out loud.
Why don't I take medication? So, the reason I don't take medication currently is because I'm awaiting titration. So, I could have started medication 12 months ago, but it would have meant I'd have had to pay for it. And I couldn't settle on the idea of taking something and then setting myself up for a life tax of having to pay for them. And I knew if I had them and I felt a difference, there's no way I'd be able to live without them. So I knew that I had to wait to be able to access them on the NHS. And actually, I think doing so has helped me to get to know myself better.
Oh, here we go. Can you explain what really changed your perspective on drinking? Like, what was the moment?
I think the moment that things changed for me is when I stopped being able to do things socially without Dutch courage. I'd totally lost my sober confidence. And I think as you get older, drink impacts you more.
Mm-hmm.
So what used to take me a day took 3 days, but then I'd be drinking every other day. So then it was just living in a constant cycle of chasing a rush and a hit of dopamine to then just simply feeling shit all the time.
Yeah. How have you dealt with moments of poor self-control? Do you feel like you can practice it?
In what context?
I don't know. That's the question. I don't have context for you.
So self-control being
So you had like speaking to the drinking. If you were saying to yourself, actually, I probably should knock this on the head, but then carry on anyway. In hindsight, how did you pull out of that?
I think I've thought this for many years, and it had to get to a point where I was ready to do it. And I feel like this year was fate. Like last year, I stopped drinking, and then I went to Butlins the end of January, and I always had a date in mind when I was starting drinking again. This year, I had Butlins booked in, and it got cancelled, and that was the big thing that was making me think I'm going to hit a roadblock here. But it got cancelled, and I was like, I've got a free run here. How long can we take this for? And I've never once said I have stopped drinking permanently, because my brain doesn't cope with final. My brain can't compute never being able to drink again. I can drink again. I'm choosing to not at the minute.
Yeah, it becomes a thing you have decided to do for you, but
I'm in control of it. And it's like last Friday, there was times when I was like, just pass a drink, let me become the person people want me to be. But you know what? Speaking to people around me, they went, we noticed you were quieter, but that's okay, we understand. And that was my colleague going, like, they'd come up and they'd say, come and have a dance. And if I said no, they were really respectful of that. And it was weird how people reacted to knowing, because I've been at the company 16 years and a lot of the older people know I'm the one that brings the party, but they were like, you were so much more present, even if you weren't the one on the dance floor with a mic swinging it round, pants round your head, standard behaviour. But yeah,
Yeah.
I think you've got nothing to lose giving it a try. If
Yeah.
there's something that you're using to give yourself a false wall, you've got nothing to lose by giving it a try.
Yeah. So that's the thing. I don't have, or I don't recall ever having an issue with drink, but I've also never been in, I've never been in love with it either. So like I'll go months without it because I don't have, whereas I had other issues in the past. So it's like a similar journey, just not specifically with alcohol. You know what I mean?
Oh, I've been there in my younger years.
Yeah. So there's two good ones here because I haven't scrolled all the way down. So you're getting them in order. What is something a friend could do to you that would make you cut them off?
Purposefully overstep boundaries that I'd set.
Yes.
Once mistake, twice no.
Yeah.
I can't have that. And I used to let people do it all the time. I used to let people constantly do things that I wasn't okay with. I no longer do.
Yeah.
Like if I say to you, you've done that, I want to let you know that that's something that I'm not okay with.
Yeah.
If you choose to do that again, you're not respectful of me, and I know at that point I'm not going to be able to respect you either.
Yeah.
So there's no point even trying.
Yeah, I like that. Do you think the SSRIs didn't help due to your ADHD?
I know through looking at studies and reading like in-depth research around a large proportion of neurodivergent people within a study. It was shown that SSRIs helped in some way in relation to dulling down the emotion, but the actual way in which the medication worked actually caused issues with the dopamine receptors because it was fighting to bring more serotonin. Actually, what it did was confuse and complicate the dopamine receptors, which in turn creates, in a lot of patients, depersonalization, all the things I experienced. So for 6 months, they stopped me from topping myself and got me to a place where I no longer felt. But then anything after 6 months, for me, it was a downhill spiral for nearly 7 years.
Yeah. Okay, let's go for something a little happier. Are you?
But with that, one thing I will say, sorry, and
Yeah.
it's extremely important. Everyone is different with their medication. SSRIs and medication that is mind altering are not the type of things that you go, I'm throwing this out, I'm cutting it off, it's doing no good for me. I came off SSRIs over a 12-month period, and I did it by micro reductions. The side effects I had were horrific. It was horrible, but they would have been a lot worse had I have not. So even if you think the medication is causing you damage, you've got to get it out your system in the proper way with medical support and speak to your GP. That's so important.
Yeah. See, I didn't do that, and I can tell you from firsthand experience, not the way to do it. Now, I wasn't on them anywhere near as long, but they all say don't just stop, and that's exactly what I did, and it was not a good move. So Jojo asks, are you time aware?
In some respects, yes. So I have time blindness in the sense of I'm always like, I'm hyper aware if I've got an appointment, for example. So I find myself not doing anything
before the appointment because I could get lost in an activity, which would then lead to me being late. So I have a blindness to time. Like I can't go, oh, I've been doing this half hour. If I fixate on something, I'm losing time.
Yeah.
So I almost have to prep. Like I always book appointments early in the day if I can, because I know if I get them done, the back end of the day, I can dick around and do what I need to.
Yeah.
So yeah, time blindness for me. I had a lot of systems in place before I even realised I had ADHD that I did to try and stop it. Like 10 alarms on your phone, all those things.
Alarm reminders, yeah.
Yeah. Alexa, remind me to wipe my arse.
Yeah.
like just I had so many other things controlling and directing my life. I was just like, yeah, help.
Yeah, I'm always too early to everything, so I set alarms to slow myself down. To be like, no, it's not time to leave yet. Wait till the alarm goes off, then it's time to leave.
Is that because you don't want to be late, so you'd rather be super early?
Yeah, no, I'd rather turn up to something 2 hours too early than 10 minutes too late. But sometimes it's completely unnecessary. So it's like, you don't need to be that early. There really is no requirement for this. You can be, as the South Africans would say, fashionably late, which I can't do either. But yeah, I need alarms to sort of tell me now you can move, because if you move before this, you will be too early, which is kind of hilarious in itself. But at least I'm never late for things.
Well, apart from when you got to the first thing early, had a fantastic time, and then was late to the second thing recently.
Yes, that definitely happened. I blame the trains.
That made me laugh because I was having so much fun at the first thing. It was the second thing that impacted. That's the problem when you're enjoying yourself and you're getting something from it. That's when time blindness hits, because you just want to sit with it. It's like, this is where I need to be. I'm getting something from it. I don't want it to stop.
Right. Wow, we may not get through all these questions. What is your
Alice?
Yeah. What is your favorite childhood memory?
Strange.
If it's not too personal.
No, it's not too personal. One of my favorite childhood memories, and I still have it when I'm older. Like I still have it now. So where I live locally, there's a charity called the Round Table, and we've always grown up knowing that this charity supported my dad's family when he was children, so they could have like Christmas dinner and stuff, because my dad was from like a really poor background. And there's a charity called the Round Table, and every Christmas they do a Santa on a sleigh, and it goes around all the estates. They collect money, and obviously I still get it now, like the chills with it. I always remember when we were kids knowing that this charity was important and seeing how my dad responded to it, because of the impact it had on him. And I think one of my favorite childhood memories was that act of giving back. It taught me a lot of values in life, and I always think of that fondly. And since I've been back home the past couple of Christmases, it's weird because the other Christmas period, I was like, Santa's coming, and then like me and my dad turned into kids, and my dad gets so excited, and I do. But yeah, those are some of my favourite memories. Just being taught core values, and then later understood in life. It still gives my brother gives me a sense of excitement. There's something about it that just makes you, I don't know. I don't know if you have similar round by you, but for me, the personal story is knowing the why it meant so much to my dad, and I think that's why it always has significance to us.
Yeah, well, that's the thing. I have a few memories similar to that. That are, even if I'm like a third party in that moment, there's something really sublime about something like that sits with you, and becomes a core memory that you remember for all the right reasons. So there, just to sort of maintain RSD here, there was a question earlier regarding mental side effects to SSRIs, but obviously that was answered. So, what is your favorite type of self-care?
I love doing skincare, and it's weird. Like I do it on live sometimes, but I really feel that that is a time where I just give back and I just look after myself. But I also love doing impromptu lives where they're not structured, where it's just a chat.
Yeah.
Because at times where you feel a bit detached, talking to people that you understand and you connect with, that's self-care as well. Like, I think self-care is often seen as eating a salad, going for a walk, going to the gym, but fundamentally self-care is anything that serves you well
Yeah.
and has a positive impact on you, and that could be anything.
Yeah, I really like that. I see. For me, it's movies, so I didn't see them as self-care, but I'm learning more and more that they are. Do you use music according to emotions? And if so, which genre with which emotion?
I've got set lists. I've got one that's called mood music, one that's called hyper, and I think like I can use music to bring emotion. Like,
Mhm.
I'm not a good crier, which some people would find strange because they like people would have seen me cry, but I'm not a great crier. I tend to cry at saft things. Like, I'd cry at the John Lewis advert when that man was on the moon on his own. I'd cry at the fact that he was on his own and no one was with him at Christmas. But then something extreme and tragic would happen and I'd just bottle it up. So I will use music to alleviate it. But lyrics are powerful, and lyrics can have different meanings as you grow up.
Yeah, absolutely.
Um, and I think, yeah, I connect with the lyric. Um, and there's some songs like the Lathams, um, Struggle, a great song. Dermot Kennedy, Better Days Are Coming, a great song. But lyrically, they're amazing. And there's another one, Woe Man by the Twang, being as my brother's on. That's a song that connects me and him. And
Yeah.
the lyrics in it are, um, Woe Man, I don't care what you say, brother, I love you, and I'm showing you the way. Uh, you're that little git your mother said, drag you through the dark and into something. It's something like that. The lyrics to the song have a lot of relevance.
Yeah, I have certain songs that I associate specifically with individual people. So yeah, I can understand that. To circle back, the question that I misinterpreted earlier is did you have any mental health side effects to quitting alcohol?
Um, the the mental health side effects, I'd say, generally no, but I went through periods of real loneliness
Hmm.
because every place that I would normally seek social connection, I'd removed because of alcohol. So it did feel quite lonely. Um, and people would stop asking me to go places because they knew I wasn't ready. So that'd probably be the only real thing that had impacted. But I've one of my close friends, Stefan. He's nearly 8 9 months sober, so he's been a great rock of support.
Yeah, I
He's
like that.
he's also riddled as hell, and he's just realised as
Right.
well.
I think we have reached the end of the questions. I saw
Fabulous.
some comments directed at me, but I've missed them. So to all the people saying sweet things, thank you so much.
No, but thank you. There was no other person to sit and do this with me. I'd said that to you. I feel we've come on a journey together,
Yeah.
and like I've said before, forged a great friendship that it's beyond this app. And I think
Yeah.
I trust you, and I think you know more about me and know where you could take it. You make me feel comfortable. So, and also, I still get kicks from his voice as well. It's never gone.
Oh, someone wishes to make a statement.
But you don't love him more than you love me, right?
I love you both equally because it's not a competition.
True.
No, but if it were, I'd win.
I, I think you and Greg are a perfect blend of me as a person. I think I connect with Perry on one side, and I think I connect with Greg on the other side. Collectively, you are a grounding couple for me.
We love you.
We
And
love
I
you
was
very much.
actually joking, I promise. I love the relationship you have with Greg, and I love the one you have with me, and I love the one you have with us together.
Yeah.
All three of those, I believe, are separate entities, and I adore that about our little friendship.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And yeah, if anyone isn't coming to Manchester and wants to come, first of June in Manchester, come and join us. There's going to be a bunch of batshit crazy people on a field. Let's go.
Yeah, it's going to be great. I'm looking forward to it. It's next week. Like, it's come around pretty quick.
It is indeed.
Yeah.
I will be starstruck. Don't be daft. It's really, really, really makes me chuckle because, like, and I understand it in a way, because when I first started, people like Chris Hood, Nush, and that were people to me that I'd watch and I'd go, oh, and then you go further on your journey, then you connect with them and you go, they're just people. And I think that is the fundamentally, like, TikTok and when you look at people and you go, oh, that's so and so, that's so and so. We're just people further ahead than you are on your journey. And the beauty about time is you're going to get to this place where we are now, and we're going to get to a place where somebody else is. So we're all going to get there and be there. And the only difference is we may be able to offer some information to you, but we've also probably got that from other people. So it's just this passing the baton. And I think that's the important thing. Pass the baton down and share. And yeah, no, I love talking to everybody. There's no one I've come across where I've not thought I've got to. There's a couple of weirdos, like, let's be honest, but they're normally ones that just send you crazy messages. But generally, I just think we're all the same people trying to get to the same outcome. And I think as long as we're all looking the same way, we'll get there together.
Exactly.
Thanks. And that's, for me, that is my why. I always say, the second my intent change and my why changes, I'll stop doing it, because I don't want that to change. It is so people can go, I've taken something from you the same way I've taken from others. And I've learned from Greg. He does some videos and I go, why do you contextualize things so well, you bastard? Like I'm just like, you managed to you've got the words that my brain hasn't got, but I'm grateful for it because now I understand.
Which in and of itself is still funny to me, because I'm like, I'm just talking. It's just how my brain works. Like, nothing's scripted. So I'm like, well, I guess I accidentally said something that made sense.
It is.
Yeah.
No, thank you very much. What time we are?
20 past 9.
Yeah, let's pull that down. Thank you all very, very much. What's going on with my eyes?
But also, like, can we just give some props up to the people liking? You've hit over 30K already.
Oh, thank you.
Right.
And the gifts. Thank you all very much.
Yeah.
No, I appreciate you. This episode will be going out on the 5th of June, which will be my birthday. So randomly, this goes live on my birthday, just based on the sequence. So this will be on YouTube then, and it will also be on Spotify. But for anybody watching, and I appreciate that you may have watched this and thought I've taken something from it, and that is absolutely amazing. But what could really help all of us connect with other people and to expand this is go onto the YouTube channel and subscribe there if you would. Go onto Apple, Spotify, any that you use, and just give it a follow. Listen to it in the background, put the volume down, because actually, if collectively we all listen to it or just help move it forward, collectively we're going to help other people connect with us and other people to hear the podcast, because unfortunately that's how the algorithm works.
Yeah.
So yeah, any help there through the link tree would be greatly appreciated. Can you say the name of your podcast? So the name of the podcast is Behind the Mask.
hyphen in conversation with. But if you go on the link tree as well, you can click on there, you go straight to the YouTube, or it'll go to the Spotify channels. In fact, Greg and Perry's one was on there last week, and there's just been the new one today that's dropped with Dan on it.
So I should probably go and link up with that as well.
Right, thank you. Right, take care all, and yeah, thank you all for being amazing. I'm sure there's a filter on my eyes that look weird.
Must be the light.
Bombastic side-eye. Do we need birthday cake for June? we need cake all the time.
Cake.
Yeah, always cake.
Cake.
Yeah.
Cake.
Cool. Right.
So-
Good night. God bless. Did we get to 30k? Go on, let's get to 30k.
Well, on my screen we didn't, but on a lot of the comments
Mine, it
they
says
definitely did.
29.7.
29.7.
Let's go. Bub, 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 bub. Tap, 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 tap.
Maybe there's been catch-ups.
Oh,
I don't know, some people have seen
29.8.
30.
29.9.
30. There we go.